It is that Football in Focus, going from the Tee It Up Indoors on Battleground. Mike Fanning with us on Grimsley Whirlies football. We're just about the wind last Friday night. Blew the ball off the tee a couple of times. Finally had to go with the human holder for the ball last week in our game over at Northern Guilford. So sometimes that happens. But with Mike here, Mike, first of all, this is an interesting way to start this question off. But if you were coaching against the Grimsley Whirlies, how would you go about trying to stop this team? Because nobody's had much success doing that this year so far. How would you stop this Grimsley team?
Boy, that's a great question. That's something I've been pondering.
Have you? Okay.
You know, that's something
you have to think about it sometimes. You see how successful they've been. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, to watch them week in and week out, you start to wonder what kind of defensive scheme it's going to look like to stop them. And actually, I'm going to take that from a little bit different angle. I think you really are going to have to beat them defensively. You're going to have to let your offense help you out a ton. Okay, because you just have to limit possession. So you just got to get the offense out there and only let the Grimsleys have the ball. You know, as crazy as this sounds, maybe just once a quarter. You got to run. You got to control the clock.
So you got to get your offense going a long, sustained drive. Nothing
Absolutely.
else. You don't play keep away from Grimsley.
You know, it's interesting you brought that up because at Northwest, you know, we've seen the Whirlies on offense throw the ball to the sidelines and use so much of the field that, you know, is at least for their deep shots outside the numbers, you know, hashes on out. So you see the safeties, the free safety, the safeties, they start creeping towards the sidelines. We see the linebackers start to take a step or two. Now it creates tighter windows on the edges, but it frees up the middle of the field. And Grimsley in the second half was able to exploit that. So I think you're going to have smart secondary guys willing to take chances, try to jump a route, jump a play, try to come up with a couple turnovers. Because if you just sit back, you try to play man-on-man, these guys, Taylor, Anderson, the wide receiving core, Cato getting involved, Howerton, Mitchell Summers catching the ball, then the run game between what Faison and Summers can do just in between the tackles. The numbers just don't work out. They're going to find ways to score. So
are you better off occasionally taking a penalty instead of giving a big play? Just go ahead and take the penalty instead of giving Grimsley those big plays. Some guys just go ahead and let them have it, and they take it and get it. But should you go ahead and get called for pass interference, get called for a holding on defense to avoid some of those plays? You have to do that sometimes.
I think we've actually seen that. I think we've seen defensive backs just say, hey, look, I'm beat. I'm going to go ahead and try to pull.
Tackle the guy before he gets the ball.
He's not going to catch it. I'm going to tackle him. I'm going to take the penalty. Unfortunately, a few times those have been unsuccessful. We've seen defensive backs that are undersized against these Grimsley wide receivers go ahead and try to do that and and still get burned and still be unsuccessful the way these guys have made catches the last few weeks.
Well, I heard this about last week's game. Somebody told me this yesterday. One of the parents of the Northwest players said last week Northwest actually did have one major success. They actually forced Grimsley to punt the ball, and this was for the first time this season. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
In
the second half,
first time this season. What game was it? Game 6?
Yeah, game 5. Yeah. We finally got to see Anderson go back and make some punts.
First punt of the year.
Yeah, you know. Wow. If anything,
that says a lot for the offense right there.
Yeah, Grimsley's offense is going to get slowed down when it's self-induced.
Yeah, penalties.
I mean, between holding, illegal procedure penalties. Yeah, that's when you've seen them 4th and long, and even on 4th and long, you've seen the Whirlies talking about how few times they've punted or it's been a turnover. Is even on 4th and long, they're comfortable going for it. So yeah, that's a great question. I've been going through in my mind how are you going to slow them down. I felt like going into all these games when they played some really good defenses in Tabor, in Rollsville. And you know, I felt like these more experienced defenses are going to come after Faison Brandon. He's a sophomore. They're going to A-gap pressure, and they're going to try to make him, you know, throw the ball before he's ready to. And yet the pressure has come, and he's just as cool as a cucumber. And his eyes stay downfield. He can use his legs. He just has not been really rattled yet this year. And unfortunately, the way this conference season plays out, I don't see a lot of good defenses left on this, you know, on this schedule for the Whirlies. So.
Only hope you got is, again, like you talked about earlier, get the football. If you can put together a long, sustained drive and keep Grimsley's offense off the field, you may have some success. But what about on defense? Bryce Davis is still not playing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's a luxury. If you ever get him back, just think how good they could be then if they do get him back sometime here.
I tell you, Ja'Kai Eason, the other defensive end for the Whirlies. You know, not a lot of people knew him because he was kind of buried underneath all the defensive end hype that Eason brought, or that Davis brought. But 8 tackles last week to go along with the sack. And it almost felt like when you were watching the Panthers game back in the day with Luke Kuechly playing linebacker, where at the bottom of every single pile, you unpile them, and there's Luke Kuechly. And I just felt like that way with Easton. We kept saying it. He only had 8 tackles in the box score, but I felt like every time they peeled back the players, there's 13 on the bottom of the pile.
Hey,
Easton
you
had
just
a
gave
huge
it to us.
game.
I asked you what number does it wear. I mean, you'd have to, that number is probably number 13 popping up everywhere for you then.
Oh, and the way the Whirlies use him is they'll move him around. Every single play, he might line up on the left, he might line up on the right. Sometimes his hand's in the ground, sometimes it's not. It's a matchup. It's a nightmare matchup for the offensive line to always keep track of where this high hustle guy is at. And he was just in the backfield. He was involved in too many plays in the Northwest game, and it just really shut their offense down.
Well, you know you're good when you can move around all those different positions and all those different setups. You know you're good when you do that, and you got to feel good about your game. What about Terrell Anderson and Alex Taylor? Who are the guys that they're understudied? We hear so much about them, but what's going to happen when those guys may go down one week, can't play as much, or even where everybody's always looking toward the future, looking at the crystal ball, what's going to be like in the future to come? Who are those upcoming understudies right now for Anderson and Taylor? You mentioned a couple of guys, Howerton and maybe some guys earlier. Who are those guys? And you also mentioned Caden Cato was a very good JV receiver. Cato, very good.
Caden Cato, he's been hurt for a lot of portion of this season. He just hasn't seen that many snaps. But really, between him, Kyan Battle, and then, as I mentioned, this DJ Howerton, they lost a huge tight end threat with Albright graduating and going on to play at the University of Northwest.
They still have some tight end now.
And so they do. They do have some tight end packages with DJ Howerton. But guess what?
A tight end.
Guess what? He wears number 15. He's also 15 years old. He's a sophomore. Actually, wears 32. I'll take that back.
Gotcha.
But he's a sophomore. He's learning. He's growing into the role as being that run blocker, but then also coming off the block. And he's going to be that threat. I talked about all the pressure going down the sidelines, all the vertical routes that are run down the boundaries. Watch for Howerton to start coming over the middle. And being that third guy, or Cato dragging across the middle, is all the eyes of the secondary. They go to these big wide receivers. They go to the sidelines because that's primarily where the routes have been run, and it's just freeing up huge chunks of space in the middle of the field.
Sounds like kind of like Olsen, who played for the Panthers at tight end, but he was more of a wide receiver kind of catch man. You talk about Howerton, what he can do. Doesn't sound like the prototypical type huge Goliath of a tight end, but a guy who can get downfield, make big plays, running good long routes.
He's tall. He's athletic. He's just young. 6'4", I think 195 pounds. You watch him in the game, you're like, who is that dude? He looks like you're like, wait a minute, are you telling me he's just a sophomore? So as he learns the offense and gets up to speed, that's going to be yet another understudy, another one of this outstanding sophomore class the Whirlies have right now.
Good thing about that 195, he's probably got room at 6'4" to put on about 10, 15, 20 more pounds as he gets older. He's only 15, so he's got some time to put some more weight on.
They've only targeted him a few times, but when they have, he's been wide open. So, again, you got to have such a deep class of defensive backs. And the nice thing about going against Western this weekend's game, not to jump ahead, is Western has a tremendous free safety. Okay, this Levant Madoc,
he's good.
Madoc is a real talent in the secondary, and he's a ball hawk. He's going to jump routes. So that's somebody that the Grimsley offense, they need to identify where he lines up. He might be coming on a blitz. He might be shading one of these wide receivers. He's somebody you got to keep an eye on. He's one of the gems for Western.
Yeah, they know him as LA. I think they call him LA is kind of his name he uses. And another person they use a lot, you'll be watching out for too, is Timothy Baker, the running back. Very solid running back for Western Guilford. If anybody's got a chance to try to get that offense clicking for them and try to keep it clicking to some degree, I think Baker's the guy that Grimsley's going to focus on. He's about the only guy really who can get that offense going.
If there's one thing that's worked against the Whirlies this year, and again, when you look at this point differential, the Whirlies have scored 238 points through 5 games. They've only given up 70. I mean, we haven't. The Whirlies haven't been in a game that's been close in the fourth quarter. Their offense has put these games away by the time they turn the page to the fourth quarter. So if you limit possessions, you keep things in. But one thing weighs offenses, how they scored those 70 points, is running the ball in between the numbers. Teams have had success with that. And that's where I think Baker, they're going to run some wildcat, I'm sure of it. That's where maybe Western can get some momentum, is just running the ball north and south and just 3, yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, long drives, control the football, don't make mistakes, do those little things. Maybe that's how they say it. And Baker could be one of those weapons you see utilized in
you
this
hate
game.
to be Western Guilford. You get caught up in that game, and if you got to make adjustments as the game gets going, and soon after the game gets going, you have to adjust in. You hope you've got your game plan together coming in, but you have to make those adjustments against a team like Grimsley. That's going to be tough to do. On the fly, you can't be making those kind of adjustments. It's almost like starting over. You go here, you go there. Well, I don't want to go there. I just got hit over there. This is going to be dangerous.
And we really have no idea what Grimsley's offense is going to look like coming out, because a couple of weeks ago they came out no huddle. And they really pushed the tempo, and it caught everybody a little by surprise. Guys weren't lined up, and there's just immediate mismatches all over. Then against Northwest last weekend, offense is much more deliberate, really taking its time. You know, the no hurry, no huddle, look over, check with me. So if they go push tempo, that makes this Western defense really have to be cognizant of what's going on, what down, who we're covering. I mean, it just really speeds things up. And if you don't have a ton of athletes on the field, you really got to be in the right spot.
And it might be Grimsley comes and let's get this game under control early. Let's speed it up early, get under control, get our lead, take care of everything, and we'll just build from there. And Western Guilford by that time, they're shell-shocked. They thought coming in we got a chance, but really coming in they did not have a chance. So at that situation there, Grimsley just got total control of the game. I mean, it's all theirs.
It's high school football 101. Take care of the football. Grimsley, they got 4 turnovers last week. The Northwest turned the ball over 4 times. You're not going to beat a Grimsley.
And 3 of those were picks, weren't they?
3 of them were interceptions, and then a fumble on the kickoff. You're not going to beat a Grimsley team. You're not going to beat a lot of teams.
And last week, they took
when you turn the ball over 4 times.
They took a good quarterback and made him play a different game last week. They took Blue and made him change his game. That's why he had lack of success, because he was doing a certain way. He had to make some changes. And that was tough on him, and Grimsley was able to succeed because of that.
Got it. I mean, Blue, he's got a great arm.
Oh, yeah.
He can deliver a good ball. But again, I mentioned this number 13, this Ja'Kai Easton. He just sat in the backfield all day, moved Blue around, got him off his spot, and the offense just really, it never got clicking. And then again, when you got defensive backs in a secondary like the Whirlies do, and they're ball hawks, and they're going to come after, and the 3 interceptions, one returned 49 yards. It's going to make for a long day. So if you're Western, you're like, okay, football 101, don't turn it over. Control the ball. Pick up first downs. Don't go 3 and out. Just don't beat yourself with penalties. And limit how many times you give this Whirly the football.
A lot of Whirly football going on. Some more in a few minutes when Face-On Brandon gets here. He'll be joining us later, we hope. Top ACC team now in North Carolina. Is it Duke, Carolina, Wake State? I mean, it looks like between Duke and Carolina, most people feel like. Are you watching?
I do. I think this is tough, and I'm not going to, I don't want to pit one side of the other. I think North Carolina has a lot of potential there that we haven't seen yet on the defensive side. I don't think they've lived up on the defensive side of the football to the potential I think they can play at. And some of it's the coaching and the personnel, but I feel like the Tar Heels on paper should be a little bit better than what they've shown me on the field. Whereas Duke, you're like, whoa, this team has got some chemistry. This team feels really good. They look a lot better than they do on paper. So I think momentum-wise, in the feel-good factor, I think is with Duke. But North Carolina hasn't shown me, I think, what the Tar Heels are capable of.
Does Duke beat Notre Dame on Saturday?
No.
No, Notre Dame's going to win that one.
It was a slap in the face to the Irish, and I'm not a Notre Dame fan, but I think that type of loss probably galvanized that locker room, and they said, hey, look, we got to get tougher. We got to finish. We're not going to get beat on a half a yard again. And I think they come out and they really try to control the line of scrimmage.
Who's the last NFL team to stay unbeaten this year? Miami, Philadelphia, or are you looking maybe towards San Fran? Who goes the longest unbeaten streak this year?
Again, this is I'm trying to put personal bias aside. I think the 49ers can go a long way because they're really balanced on offense, but then on defense.
Well, you got Deebo Samuels and Chris McCaffrey, man. That's 2 pretty good weapons right there.
And Brock Purdy's still a little bit of an unknown. I talk about how do you game plan against this Whirly team? Well, how do you game plan against the 49ers? I don't know who Brock Purdy is yet. Right. Can he still take the top off? I don't know. So there's a little bit of trepidation, but then on the defensive side, 49ers can play some defense. Looking at the division and things how stack up for Miami, maybe they can too. But right now, if I had money, I don't. It's all going to, anyways.
San Fran.
So, I don't know. It's tight, man. It's really tight.
What about your favorite color of car?
Oh man, I do love the blues. The blues always look sharp, especially with some of the whiter interiors. But I don't know. I go black.
Yeah, black is pretty popular. Black and white are good. Silver's pretty good too, seems like. What about favorite car overall?
Well, I worked in NASCAR.
Oh yeah, that's right.
For many, many years, and worked very closely with the Cadillac group when I was on the General Motors side, and I got a lot of respect for that, the work that goes into Cadillac and it being an American, manufacturer.
About quality right there, quality.
Every detail is refined on a Cadillac, and easy to go sports car, easy to go with performance, but as far as just driving around and really enjoying it, I'm gonna go with Cadillac.
You are a Cadillac of Grimsley reporters. Mike Fanning, good job as always.
All right.
For being here, and tomorrow night it's going to be Grimsley at Western Guilford, right? Is that right? Or
Western's coming to Grimsley.
Well, Grimsley
7:30 kick
last night, so it's in Grimsley tomorrow night, right?
Yep, absolutely. 7:30 kick, and I'm hoping for a good game. I'm hoping Timmons. I think he'll have him coached up. He finally got his first win earlier this year, and I'm hopeful for an exciting football game. We'll see.
Mike, thank you.